Nebraska starts spring football March 20th. There's a lot to learn about the Cornhuskers. Think about what has happened since their season ended last year. Got a new transfer quarterback. Casey Thompson said, you know what, I'm coming back to Nebraska as well, so a little quarterback battle set to ensue. You got a new head coach in Matt Rhule, who we had on the show, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago now, had a lot of great things to say about his team, what they've done during the spring, where they've been able to grow during the winter. We're excited to unpack what spring practice looks like when it does get here, but before that happens, what are some things we need to watch for? Husker Online will keep you in the know, the Nebraska On 3 site. There are some points of emphasis that I'm watching very closely as we get into spring ball down there in Lincoln. And the first thing I'm looking at is, what are the live rep counts looking like? And for those of you that don't know, there's different tempos from which college football teams practice at. There is whiz, which is just short for, hey, we're whistling. We're not tackling anybody. We're not fitting up. We're just going to play two-hand touch. Okay, cool. There's thud, where you actually go ahead and wrap the ball carrier and you don't take him to the ground, but you make sure that he knows you're there. You know what I'm saying? Little shoulder pads, little chin music. Then there's live. And live is just what you and I both get to watch on Saturdays. Matt Rhule told us when he came on the show, hey, we got to get more physical. We want to be a physical football team. Matt Rhule's a blue-collar, hard-nosed kind of guy. He was a walk-on himself at Penn State. They're going to be a physical football team. But how do you get to being a physical football team? Like anything else, you got to do it. You get stronger by forcing yourself to be strong, by lifting weights. You get physical by forcing yourself to be physical, by hitting other human beings. So how much of that are they doing during spring practice? Because I fully believe that we'll get the practice reports from Husker Online, and it'll say, hey, a lot of good on good today, a lot of live good on good today at the end of practice. Saw those ones, they were popping pads. There was a good goal line drill. Stuff like that's what you want to hear around Nebraska football right now, because that's what Matt Rhule came here to do. Came here to instill an edge back into Lincoln, Nebraska. Because last year they gave up right around 190 yards a game on the ground. They rushed for 112. Both of those are triple digits in terms of where they rank nationally. That's not Nebraska football, y'all. Nebraska is physical as a brand. Those of you that are in Lincoln, Nebraska watching this show, we appreciate you, but you know that about your football team. That's who you want to be. That's why Mr. Alberts brought Matt Rhule in. Okay, so what does that look like, and what's the rep count looking like during spring practice for live reps? Because you're not worried about getting ready for your opener during these 15 practices. You're worried about yourself getting better and learning what you have within your roster. So I'm excited to learn a lot about that. Jeff Sims is a transfer quarterback from Georgia Tech that I expect, and you probably expect, to compete for the starting quarterback job at Nebraska. Casey Thompson got shoulder surgery. It sounds like he's ahead of schedule, but still, you don't really plan on having him for the spring in terms of 11 on 11 or going live or anything like that. So how much distance is Jeff Sims able to create between him and Casey Thompson? Maybe if you look at it the other way, if Casey Thompson's got a large lead over Jeff Sims, how much is he able to shrink that gap? Got some thoughts on this, but if you haven't yet subscribed, would love to have you a part of the operation. We're live twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. But if you hit the bell on the On3 YouTube channel, I promise you won't miss us when we go live. And like I said, when we're not live, we still have content for you every single day talking about this beautiful game that is college football. Now, make sure you're following me on Instagram and on Twitter at JD Pakel, another way for us to involve you in the show and keep you in the know with all that we got going on here. Like I was saying, Jeff Sims, there's a lot of buzz around what he's going to do at Nebraska. He was a four-star kind of player out of high school. Translation, he's got a lot of physical ability, but you look at what he did at Georgia Tech and you say, man, he started a lot of games, but JD, he never threw for over 20 touchdowns, man. Like, I appreciate that he's at Nebraska. I appreciate he's got a lot of physical tools, but I'm hung up here on these career stats. Less than 60% on his career completion percentage. 30 touchdowns, 23 interceptions when it comes to his passing numbers. Like, that doesn't excite me, JD. Hey, I feel you, man. I understand. But here's what I would say about that. Don't overlook those career stats, but I wouldn't get stuck on those. Because you got talent, that's great as a quarterback, that's awesome, but that's only half the battle to being successful at the collegiate level. At the high school level, it's snap the ball to your best player, let him go to work. Everything else is relevant but not crucial. At the collegiate level, you have to have other variables around you in place. And look at what he had at Georgia Tech. It wasn't like he was working with a 5-star caliber kind of cast. It wasn't like he had a coaching staff that crushed it. In fact, they have a new coaching staff now at Georgia Tech. So what I'm trying to tell you is pay attention to how he could thrive in this system. If you want to be optimistic, think about what Marcus Satterfield did last year at the end of the year with Spencer Rattler, who's now the new OC at Nebraska. Marcus Satterfield is. Obviously, Spencer Rattler still playing quarterback at South Carolina, but popped the last 2 games of the year. A guy who had a lot of scrutiny coming from Oklahoma and throughout his time early at South Carolina. So what I'm trying to tell you is I think there's a system in place for Jeff Sims to grow a lot as a quarterback. And he's going to have center stage. I understand Chubba Purdy's got to get some reps too, and he's a great athlete. I understand that. But Jeff Sims transferred to Nebraska, and he didn't transfer just to hang out and get some nice Adidas gear, all right? He came there to play ball. At the same time, Casey Thompson, when he comes back, June is going to be huge for him to try and make a push to be that starting quarterback. So just pay attention to how Jeff Sims performs in those 11-on-11 settings. I'm excited for y'all to hear this conversation with Urban Meyer because he gave us a good insight as to how he assesses quarterbacks during the spring. Thing that I would look for is how do Jeff Sims' drives finish? Because Matt Rhule told us that. He's like, we want to have a quarterback that has the it factor, that's explosive downfield, yes, but we want to make sure we're taking care of the football. We want to make sure we have a quarterback that puts us in good positions. Read in between the lines here. Read in between the coach speak just a little bit. What does that mean? We want a quarterback that moves the offense. Okay, I don't need him to throw the ball 60 yards on a dime. What I do need him to do is to read that flat defender and be able to go to the check down in the flat if he has to, or go to that hitch route behind the linebacker. It's a 10-yard throw. Can you make that for me? Can you make that right decision consistently? Whoever does that the most, I believe, will be Nebraska's starting quarterback. But again, center stage is Jeff Sims for this spring practice period. You hope Casey Thompson's able to get back quickly, and you hope that he's able to make a case for it in the fall. But Jeff Sims, I fully believe, will be able to really make a lot of noise this spring. So keep an eye again over at Husker Online. Got a lot of intel for you there. Lock it in. They do a great job. Now, this is potentially the most important, just from a sheer number standpoint. Nebraska's roster last year just wasn't good enough. Right? You and I both know it wasn't up to par for what you expect at Nebraska. So I'm looking at what they brought in. Y'all, they brought in 11 transfers at some pretty premier positions. Guys that can help you and will help you. They expect to play for them right away in 2023. Arik Gilbert, Elijah Judy, Billy Kemp, the wide receiver from Virginia. A lot of guys that had a fairly high grade on them, quite frankly, out of high school. MJ Sherman, a 5-star guy from Georgia. Guys that you expect to help you at Nebraska day one. How do they mesh with this team? Because X's and O's are a big part of it. Like this staff, I promise you, they will have the X's and O's ready to rock and roll. They will have the right culture. I can say that from firsthand experience, having played for Matt Rhule, played's a strong word, having been in Matt Rhule's program. But this team as a whole just needed more talent to be competitive. Okay, so what does that look like during spring practice? Do they look different as a team? Can you tell from an operations standpoint that they're able to do some things and call some things they weren't able to call last year? You're not calling a ton of split out your tight end all the way wide and have him one-on-one, and you're able to throw him a go route because he's got freakish athleticism, like an Arik Gilbert. You now can do that if he's able to mesh, hit the ground running, and buy into what's going on. So how are they practicing? Are they meshing? Are they able to adapt quickly to the way Nebraska wants to do things? New staff for everybody, but new surroundings as well for a lot of these transfers. Talent's going to be a big part of what they want to do next year. It sounds cliche. It sounds kind of simplistic, but the players that Nebraska has via the portal are just better than what they had a season ago. What's that impact like? How quickly does that provide results? So I'm excited to watch that. But I'm telling you, man, spring has sprung. Nebraska set to get it on and popping on March 20th. We'll keep an eye on that very, very closely, as you know we do around here. So make sure you're locked in and make sure you're subscribed. but there's a lot to keep track of as the Matt Rhule era has begun in Lincoln, Nebraska. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.